Welcome back to the deep dive, ready to get those brain cells firing.
Always up for a good mental workout.
Today we're diving into some seriously deep philosophical waters with Zeno Serban's Ethica Existentiae. This one really got me thinking about, the very essence of goodness, particularly when it comes to the environment.
Yeah, Serban doesn't pull any punches. He jumps right in, dissecting those ethical frameworks we often use without even realizing it.
Right. Like when we talk about saving the planet, who are we really saving it for? Just us humans? Or does it include all animals? What about plants? Fungi? Serban lays out these different approaches: anthropocentrism, sentiocentrism, biocentrism, holism. It's like a whole philosophical buffet of centrisms.
And just when you think you've got a handle on it, he hits you with these thought experiments that really expose the cracks in these systems.
Oh, tell me about it. The penguin versus human dilemma, that one had me stumped. It's like instinctively you want to say save both. But what if you can only choose one? Who gets priority?
Exactly. And it forces us to confront those uncomfortable questions about, like, where do we draw the line on ethical consideration? A dog. Sure. A spider. Maybe a virus. Now we're in ethically murky territory.
It's like that age-old debate about pineapple on pizza. Is it inherently wrong or just like a matter of taste? But Serban takes this to a whole other level with what he calls the problem of taste.
Which boils down to, how can any ethical system truly hold up if it's ultimately based on personal preference? It's like saying, well, I like it, so it must be good.
Right. It's like not very convincing, is it?
Not when you're talking about the fate of, the entire planet.
Okay, so we've got this problem of taste. But then Serban throws another wrench in the works with the problem of evaluation.
Which is?
Well, even if, by some miracle, we all agreed on what's inherently good, how do we actually measure it? Especially when we're dealing with something as mind-bogglingly complex and interconnected as, the entire biosphere.
He's really pinpointed the two biggest challenges in environmental ethics and how they're, intertwined. But here's the kicker.
Don't tell me.
Serban thinks he might have a solution.
A solution, you say? All right, lay it on me. What's Serban's answer to this ethical head-scratcher?
Well, he calls his system Ethica Existentiae, which basically translates to the ethic of existence.
Ethic of existence has a nice ring to it, but what's the gist?
At its core, it's surprisingly straightforward. Serban lays down these foundational axioms. Think of them like ethical ground rules.
Ground rules, I like it. Okay, hit me with rule number one.
First and foremost, existence, goodness.
Whoa, hold on. Existence equals goodness. Just like that.
That's the basic premise. It's kind of a mic drop moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes a certain intuitive sense, doesn't it? Something existing has to be inherently, better than nothing existing at all.
Exactly. And he builds from there. Rule number two, more goodness is better.
Okay, I'm following so far. More existence, more goodness. Makes sense. So what's the final rule, the big ethical takeaway?
This is where the rubber meets the road. We should strive to choose the action that results in more existence.
So it's not enough to just say existence is good. We have to actively make choices that, tip the scales toward maximizing existence. I'm on board with that, but how do we actually measure something as massive and, frankly, kind of abstract as existence? It's not like we've got a cosmic ruler to measure, units of existence.
That's where it gets really, really interesting. Serban proposes using something called a reference-based ontology.
Ontology, now that's a word that sends shivers down my spine, but refresh my memory, what's an ontology again?
In the simplest terms, it's like a system for categorizing and understanding everything that exists. A catalog of reality, if you will.
Okay, I vaguely remember that from our philosophy 101 Days, but what makes it reference-based?
Imagine like a giant, ever-growing Wikipedia, but instead of cataloging information, it catalogs everything that exists.
Everything.
Everything. Every species of plant and animal, every type of rock, every ecosystem, every piece of art, every scientific discovery, literally everything we can observe and study.
Whoa, that's a huge e-database.
It's an inventory of existence on a cosmic scale. And each entry in this inventory would be representing a tiny piece of what exists.
Okay, I think I'm starting to wrap my head around this. So, a single bacterium would have a certain number of reference associated with it, its DNA, its role in the ecosystem.
Exactly. And then you scale that up. A redwood forest, with its intricate web of life spanning hundreds of years, would have exponentially more reference, reflecting its sheer scale and complexity.
So the more reference something has, the more it embodies existence, and therefore the more ethically valuable it is.
You got it. It's about recognizing the inherent goodness within the fabric of existence itself.
This is blowing my mind here. But creating this inventory of everything, I mean, it sounds like a monumental task.
Absolutely. Serban himself acknowledges it's a massive undertaking, but he argues that we already have many of the tools we need, electron microscopes to study the tiniest particles, telescopes peering into the depths of space, AI to process unfathomable amounts of data.
So while we might not have this complete inventory today or even tomorrow, it's not outside the realm of possibility. We're talking about a whole new era of ethical decision-making here. Okay, so we've got this mind-blowing concept, existence equals goodness, more is better, and we can quantify it all with this reference-based ontology. But how do we actually put this into practice? Like, how does it help us make those tough real-world decisions?
Well, Serban walks us through a really compelling scenario. He calls it the forest or the suburbia.
Ah, yeah, that one really got me. It's that classic dilemma, right? A city's growing, needs more housing, but the only land left is this beautiful, thriving forest.
Right, so it's like, do you clear cut the forest to build suburbs or...
Or try to find some other way, which, let's face it, is way easier said than done.
Exactly. And what Serban brilliantly illustrates is how those traditional ethical frameworks we were talking about, well, they just kind of fall apart in this situation.
Yeah, it's like, if we're only thinking about human well-being, the suburbs seem like the obvious answer, right?
Yeah.
More homes, more jobs, economic growth.
Sure, but what about the inherent value of the forest itself, all those plants and animals, the entire ecosystem?
Right, it's like, we can't just ignore all the other life forms that call that forest home. But then, how do you even start to compare those things? A forest versus, like, human needs.
It's a real head scratcher. And that's where Serban's approach offers a different perspective.
Okay, so instead of just going with our gut feeling, or let's be honest, sometimes just following political agendas, we could actually look at the numbers. We could see which option, protecting the forest or building those suburbs, would actually result in more existence over the long haul.
Precisely. It's about making those tough choices based on a more holistic understanding of the impact.
I mean, it's a radical idea, but it's also incredibly compelling when you really think about it.
It is. And while Serban's Ethica Existente is still very much a theoretical framework.
Because, let's be real, actually gathering all that data and crunching those numbers, that's a massive undertaking.
Absolutely. But it's this shift in thinking that's so important. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this incredible, interconnected web of existence.
It's like that saying, when you pull on one thread in the web of life, you find it connected to everything else.
Exactly. And Serban is giving us a new lens through which to view those connections, and perhaps a new way to make choices that benefit not just ourselves, but the entire intricate system.
It's definitely given me a lot to ponder. And you know what's really got me thinking is, Serban focuses on maximizing existing entities, right?
Right.
But what about the ethics of creating new forms of existence? I mean, think about all the advancements in fields like AI, synthetic biology. We're talking about potentially creating entirely new forms of life.
It's a question Serban only briefly touches upon, but it's a critical one for sure.
It's like his system gives us a framework for measuring the value of but what about the value of what could be?
It's a whole other layer of complexity. Where do we draw the line? What are the ethical implications of creating something brand new, something the world has never seen before?
Right. It's a deep dive for another day, or maybe several.
Indeed. But it's a question worth pondering, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And for those of you listening, that's something to chew on as you continue your own exploration of these ideas. What does it truly mean to create in a world where existence itself is precious? That's all the time we have for today, but wow, what a journey into the mind of Zeno Serban. If you're ready to dive deeper into Ethica Existente, be sure to check out our show notes for links to his work and other resources. And as always, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.